In the year 2035, technology had advanced to a point where it birthed a new world known as Connect. This digital realm was a mirror of the real world, complete with lifelike AI NPCs, masterful swordsmanship, and spellbinding magic that could only be found within the confines of the game. Over a staggering 100 million people flocked to this captivating world. However, not all was serene. At the entrance gate, a gruesome sight unfolded. A large group of lifeless bodies lay sprawled on the ground, a testament to the brutal conflict that had erupted. Amidst the chaos, a man who went by the in-game name Crash screamed in agony as deadly daggers pierced his body. Onlookers watched in shock as he fell to the ground, his life extinguished. A collective cry rang out, branding Doan a villain and an enemy of the Empire. One voice among the crowd urged the rest to attack the lone warrior. They charged forward, determination etched across their faces. Little did they know that Doan remained remarkably composed, as the system displayed his rank as 13th and his class as psychokinetic. An aggressor took aim, unleashing an arrow and crying for Doan's demise. Yet with a mere raise of his two fingers, Doan deflected the arrow, causing it to decapitate its sender. Panic set in as the leader ordered his knights to unleash a volley of arrows. The projectiles hurtled toward Doan, but he raised his hand once more, halting the arrows mid-flight. The knights gaped in astonishment. In a swift motion, Doan redirected the arrows back at the knights. Chaos ensued as they scrambled to dodge, but not all would escape unscathed. Several were struck before they could evade. With a deft roll of a dagger, Doan closed in on the leader, drawing blood with a swift attack. He then turned his attention to the remaining knights, their curses filled with disbelief at his psychokinetic prowess. One knight, however, gazed skyward and gasped at the sight of suspended weapons. Without warning, Doan manipulated the weapons, aiming them menacingly at the knights. Dread filled their hearts, knowing their fate was sealed. He lowered his hand, unleashing the deadly arsenal upon them. Leaving a trail of lifeless knights behind, Doan moved on. Bloody footprints marked his passage as he entered the castle. Dispatching the guards proved effortless, but as he surveyed the surroundings, he couldn't help but wonder about something amiss. A cough nearby interrupted his thoughts, and there stood the Pope. With a pendant clutched tightly in his hand, the Pope revealed that Doan's quest had reached its conclusion. Doan's eyes fixated on the pendant, realizing it was what he had sought for so long. The Pope spoke of God's foretelling of saviors in this world. Doan reached for the pendant, his grip unyielding, but the Pope questioned him. He asked why there were only fighters, why chaos reigned, why cities burned, innocents perished, and people were enslaved. Doan, without a hint of remorse, snatched the Pope's necklace and nonchalantly blamed the guild that had conspired with the Empire. Footsteps outside disrupted their conversation, and Doan cursed, realizing the guild's latecomers had arrived. Ignoring the Pope's warning about God's intentions, he placed the pendant into a peculiar box with a central hole. As the box accepted the pendant, it revealed a concealed passage below. Descending into the passage, Doan's thoughts were jumbled when he spotted a book and various objects hovering in a purple light. These, he surmised, were the first mythical items within Connect. Memories of 5 years ago flooded back, major guilds colluding with the Empire, leading to the world's destruction. Doan swiftly stashed these precious items into his inventory, aware of the guild's looming fury if they discovered he had obtained them first. As he pondered his next move, his gaze fell upon something intriguing resting on a nearby table, sparking his curiosity. As he examined the peculiar game cartridge in his hand, he couldn't help but wonder why it was there. Suddenly, a powerful surge of energy radiated from it, causing him to wince and clutch his knee in discomfort and confusion. The thought crossed his mind that it might be a connection error, and he pondered its significance. In a moment of panic, he decided to log out immediately. In a blink, he found himself back in his room, jolting upright. His heart raced as he spotted a menacing stab wound near his chest. A voice admonished him to stay still. Frustration bubbled within him. Things were going too smoothly, he thought. The man, accompanied by a group of well-dressed individuals, questioned his restlessness and suggested that he should embrace a peaceful death. Anger welled up inside him, and he spat out insults, branding them as nothing more than worthless scum. Within the group, one man informed their leader about capturing Doan and inquired if they should bring him in alive. The response was chillingly clear. The president only desired Doan's head. The group then took a firmer grip on him, mocking his audacity to believe he could escape unscathed because of his gaming skills. They scorned him, taunting that he was fearless after gaining fame. Desperation coursed through him as he begged for his life. One of the men covered his face with a menacing mask and raised a sharp blade, ready to deliver the fatal blow. Panic seized him, and he thought these men were unhinged for taking lives over a mere game. He wondered if his end was inevitable, like this. Suddenly, a voice repeatedly called him sir, jolting him awake. Panic surged through him as he sat up, bewildered. He examined his hand in confusion and glanced around, trying to grasp what had just happened. He vividly remembered his death from the stabbing. Nearby, someone groaned in pain, and a maid named Anna inquired about his well-being, addressing him as Raul. The name struck him as foreign, and he wondered who Raul was. But his astonishment deepened when he noticed a level status above Anna, indicating she was at level 3. Anna expressed concern about his cold sweat and suggested calling a doctor. He was lost, unable to comprehend the situation, feeling like an unwitting witness to something inexplicable. Then, a notification from the system appeared, informing him that his soul had settled in, activating Connect's closed beta system. He was now equipped with the user interface, and the current user count stood at 1. Panic coursed through him as he questioned whether it was some cruel joke. It dawned on him that he had somehow found himself inside the world of Connect. Stepping onto the room's balcony, he marveled at the sensation of the wind and the surroundings, a stark contrast to his previous experiences with Crash. He understood that synchronization, the connection level with Connect, determined a player's strength in the game. Normal players had around 30% synchronization, but he was close to 90%. He had maintained his top-ranking position for a decade until the major guilds emerged, but now he knew he inhabited a different body. Feeling somewhat unlucky for investing so much time in his previous avatar, he remembered that this was still a closed beta, and at the moment, he was the sole user in this world. Raising his hand, he realized he could still access his inventory even in the closed beta. He decided to scan user information, and the system detected locked user data, quickly updating his profile. Enduring the lingering pain, he discovered his current name was Raul Ashton, the youngest son of the Ashton family, the 5th Count of the Reuben Kingdom. The Ashton County was the first to succumb to Connect's influence. Memories flooded back as he recalled that the Ashton County was a prominent Orthodox family in the Reuben Kingdom. Tragedy had struck when the Count and his eldest son mysteriously perished, while the second son went missing. Chaos ensued as the youngest son inherited the county, culminating in a failed attempt to halt a monster invasion after the barrier of the Forbidden Area had been breached. Realization washed over him as he acknowledged his identity as the youngest son of the Ashton family, Raul Ashton. Gazing at the picturesque city before him, he sensed the impending ruin that would befall it in the next 3 years. Determination surged within him as he entered his room, recognizing that he no longer had Bune or Crash to rely on. It was his last chance. His fists clenched with resolve as he acknowledged the suffering he had endured living as Ban. Missing this opportunity was unthinkable. His gaze fell upon a sword on the table, and he understood that there was only one path to avert disaster. He had to become stronger. He knew that in a month, Ashton Count's traditional coming-of-age ceremony would commence, and if he reached the semifinals, he could enter the Kingdom Academy to bolster his strength and safeguard his life. However, his body suddenly gave way, and he collapsed onto the floor. Confusion clouded his thoughts. Why did he feel so exhausted after just a few swings? Glancing at his status, he realized he was only at level 5, 2 levels behind the maid. He knew he had to begin rigorous training immediately for the upcoming tournament. When the day of the tournament arrived, he marveled at the multitude of participants. A sense of duty weighed upon him as he scanned the competition, fully aware that he would have to face them in battle. Memories of his coach's words resurfaced, reminding him that it had only been 10 minutes, yet he felt utterly drained. He attributed it to the intense pain he endured during the grueling qualifiers. With the system in mind, he recalled being at level 13 during his last check, and his stamina was primed. He had a solid plan for the matches, filling him with confidence about reaching the semifinals. Suddenly, an attack from behind caught him off guard, but he swiftly evaded, causing the assault to strike the ground. He turned to find a fist behind him, and the attacker apologized, claiming it was an accident. The man referred to him as a precious noble and questioned his purpose in the tournament. Recalling the man's name as Dian, Raul realized that Dian had bullied him during swordsmanship training in the past. The family motto held that they trained like it was a real battle, treating everyone as equals on the training ground and absolving anyone of responsibility for training injuries. Dian was nothing more than a bully who preyed on the weaker trainees. Dian suggested that Raul withdraw while he still could, warning that this time it wouldn't be just one bone broken but every single one in Rawl's body. He mockingly instructed his cousins to let Rawl pass, anticipating Rawl's inevitable defeat. With a heart full of determination, Rawl vowed to crush Dian in the finals. Meanwhile, in Ashton's castle, the butler held a report for the man. When questioned about any useful individuals in the tournament, the butler was about to reply when the man's surprise was palpable. He inquired about Rawl's whereabouts, and the butler reported that Rawl had returned to his room after completing his meal. Count Melvin Ashton, Rawl's father, expressed his satisfaction with Rawl's progress. He had never forced Rawl to learn swordsmanship because Rawl was weaker than his brothers. Melvin had patiently waited for Rawl to stand up for himself. Rawl's perseverance had exceeded all expectations. Melvin resolved to visit Rawl after the finals. The day of the finals finally arrived, charged with anticipation and uncertainty. The audience, growing impatient, urged them to wrap up the match, calling for an end to the spectacle. The man facing Rawl cursed under his breath, baffled by why his opponent, seemingly weak, remained standing. Rawl, panting from exhaustion, faced a relentless onslaught of attacks. Despite his weariness, he managed to parry each strike, avoiding getting hit. The man's frustration mounted as none of his strikes found their mark. In a fit of rage, he launched a ferocious attack, shouting at Rawl to go down. Rawl, quick on his feet, slid backward to create some space between them, leaving onlookers and the audience in stunned disbelief. From the crowd, someone acknowledged that Rawl had endured the man's relentless attacks multiple times, questioning how much more he could withstand. Another voice chimed in, praising Rawl's resilience and offering support, further infuriating the man. The man swung his sword with fury, calling Rawl a rat and taunting him about running away. Rawl, undaunted, parried the man's strikes, and the crowd roared with anticipation. The man swung again, but Rawl deftly blocked his attack. With a teasing remark, Rawl taunted that he couldn't hear the man very well. Block after block, Rawl held his own, maintaining a solid defense. The man's frustration grew, and he continued to hurl insults at Rawl, questioning his honor as a member of a Count's family. Rawl, unyielding, continued to parry the man's attacks, then slid back once more, preparing for the next move. Spectators called out to the man, urging him to finish the match as they had bets riding on him. The man, known as Edmund, grew more serious, unleashing his power and forming a mana sword. He warned Rawl that he was about to end it, leaving the audience gasping in shock at the sight of the powerful mana sword. They cautioned Rawl to dodge, as a hit would mean certain defeat. Edmund swung his water-powered skill at Rawl, instructing him to meet his end. To his astonishment, Rawl stood firm, refusing to dodge the attack. Edmund, perplexed, launched another attack, causing a deafening explosion that reverberated through the arena. As the smoke slowly cleared, the referee intervened, standing in the center and declaring the match over. Rawl emerged as the winner, prompting cheers from half the audience, while the other half couldn't believe their eyes. Edmund tossed his sword aside and approached Rawl, expressing disbelief and questioning how Rawl could be the victor. He was about to explain that if the match hadn't been stopped, he would have won, but the referee cut him off, labeling him as foolish and pointing out that if the match had continued, Edmund would be dead by now. Realizing that Rawl had not been standing still but had been aiming for his neck, fear gripped Edmund, and he collapsed to the ground. Rawl approached him, mentioning that they needed to have a discussion about his disrespect toward the county after the tournament. Later, when he arrived back at their castle, Anna respectfully advised him to rest well. As soon as the door shut behind him, he couldn't contain his excitement, shouting in jubilation. He had actually won. With a smile, he opened his status and the system displayed an update. The level of Ashton's swordsmanship mastery had increased to beginner level 9. Proudly, he realized that his plan had worked, capitalizing on the game's feature that granted more experience points and mastery when battling stronger opponents. He understood that facing a more formidable adversary for a longer duration yielded greater experience points. With a clenched fist, he acknowledged the success of his strategy, thanks to his game mode, which offered an experience multiplier by removing the revive option, known as hardcore mode, with high risk and high return. He examined his status, realizing that he had previously complained, but he was now a formidable level 19. In hardcore mode, with classes in sword and psychokinetic, Rawl examined his attributes. His strength stood at 22, agility at 25, stamina at 19, intelligence at 15, willpower at 34, mana at 29, spiritual power at 35, and senses at 30. His unique traits included Psychokinetic Meister S+, Royal Lineage, and other yet undiscovered traits. Realizing that he wouldn't have been able to level up as much in a month if he had been in normal mode, he focused on the 5 unique traits. He anticipated that the rest of his traits would unlock as he continued leveling up. With the upcoming tournament in mind, he decided to test these traits during his matches. As the tournament days arrived, Raul emerged victorious in every match, with fair and clean victories. The audience couldn't fathom how the youngest son of Ashton had reached the grand finale. Speculations ran wild, with some suspecting luck or trickery. Unbeknownst to them, the early stage Connect civilians remained unaware of the player's powers. Back in their castle, Raul contemplated keeping his psychokinetic ability a secret until the right moment to reveal it to the players. He believed he could conceal it with his acting skills. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Ivan introduced himself and expressed concern for Raul's well-being, inquiring about any injuries. Raul reassured Ivan that he was perfectly fine, mentioning the presence of a priest and healer on standby. Ivan placed a hand on his shoulder, advising Raul not to let his guard down, reminding him that some wounds couldn't be healed. Raul acknowledged Ivan's genuine concern, but admitted that he wasn't accustomed to such feelings in his past life. Ivan then handed him a document, confirming that he had fulfilled his request. As Ivan was about to mention Diane, Raul interrupted, telling him not to worry, as he was confident in his victory. Ivan respectfully bowed and left the room. Raul couldn't help but notice that Ivan's demeanor resembled Melvin's when he was younger. He knew that the final opponent would be Diane, a formidable adversary who had brutally wounded his previous opponents. Raul examined the document, recognizing its value in Ashton County's betting system, which supported tournament participants. Placing the document on the table, he believed that it was enough to secure his place in the family. All that remained was to defeat Diane. The host's voice echoed, announcing the commencement of the final match. Raul faced Diane as half the audience cheered him on, urging him to win with his skills. Diane, on the other hand, called Raul a weakling and questioned how he had made it that far, vowing to make Raul regret coming up there. Diane further taunted Raul, promising that with people cheering, Raul would soon discover his worthlessness. He painted a gruesome picture of Raul crawling with his limbs cut off. Raul responded with a yawn, asking Diane if he was done. Clenching his fist in anger, Raul unleashed a powerful violet aura, overwhelming the audience with its mana. The spectators believed Raul to be no match for Diane, who appeared unimpressed. Raul analyzed Diane's stats, noting his level 42, with the class of Expert Knight, a sword user affiliated with Ashton County. Diane held the title of Ashton County Star and was considered a sword genius. Diane's stats included a potential talent grade of B, with strength at 52, agility at 41, stamina at 43, intelligence at 18, willpower at 14, mana at 32, and senses at 21. Raul speculated that Diane's potential talent was only a B, and while Diane appeared impressive, he believed it was Diane's limit. The host announced the start of the match, with Diane angrily threatening to kill Raul and branding him a coward. Ignoring the threats, Raul leaped toward Diane, swiftly positioning himself above him. Diane's attack took Raul by surprise, and he swiftly swung his sword down in retaliation. Their blades clashed, each striving not to be the first to yield. Raul forcefully pushed down his sword, causing Diane to slide back, trying to evade the blow. Angrily, Diane accused Raul of showing off, but Raul remained silent, contemplating that Diane's flexibility was below his expectations. They continued their exchange, blocking and attacking each other relentlessly. Raul noticed that Diane's strength was indeed formidable. Diane swung his sword angrily, prompting Raul to dodge skillfully. Diane questioned why Raul hadn't struck him, but Raul replied by blocking Diane's sword. He realized he could see Diane's sword clearly. Seizing an opportunity, Raul used his feet to trip Diane, sending him tumbling face first to the ground. In that moment, Raul pondered that a sword skill without practical experience was akin to a generic nobleman's sword. He couldn't help but recall how Raul had been bullied by Diane. Diane, infuriated by the trip, released his powerful aura once more, vowing to kill Raul. Unfazed, Raul calmly sidestepped Diane's attack and tripped him again, all the while noting Diane's apparent anger issues. Diane rolled on the ground, while Raul calmly remarked on Diane's behavior, suggesting he look at himself and feel ashamed of his affiliation with Ashton County. Once more, Diane charged at Raul in a fit of rage, but Raul merely punched him in the face, causing Diane to slowly fall and collapse on the ground. The audience couldn't believe that Raul had defeated Diane so decisively. Rawl informed the referee that his opponent was down and inquired if the match would continue. The referee declared Rawl the winner of the Ashton Coming of Age tournament, prompting the audience to cheer and celebrate Rawl's victory. Despite the acclaim, Rawl stumbled, realizing that he had won but had dreadful stamina. Concerned, his people immediately summoned a healer. As he contemplated his upcoming journey to the Kingdom Academy, the system presented him with the completion of the Coming of Age tournament quest, rewarding him with experience points, coins, and a random skill book. Later, in the castle, Rawl's father, Melvin, told him that he couldn't allow him to go to the academy. Rawl was surprised and asked for the reason. Melvin explained that Rawl needed to stay by his side longer, especially since he had fallen after the match. Rawl argued that he had learned that the journey of the sword was lifelong and reminded Melvin of his own words. Confidently, Rawl asserted his determination to go to the academy to learn more. Melvin, taken aback and surprised, eventually smiled, realizing that Rawl had truly grown. He stood up, releasing his strong aura, and aimed his sword at Rawl, accepting the challenge. Facing his father, Rawl knew there would be no holding back. Melvin warned him that he wouldn't go easy on him, questioning Rawl about his next move. A month later, as he rode in a carriage, surrounded by knights, Rawl couldn't help but reflect on his earlier confrontation with his father. He remembered accepting his father's decision and charging at him with determination. Melvin had playfully teased him, but then displayed incredible strength and skill, causing Rawl to pass out briefly. Melvin explained that it was just a taste of his true abilities. Rawl understood that his father's strength was vital to preventing the fall of Ashton County. He swore to get stronger to protect his family. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Melvin watched Rawl depart, recalling their training sessions where he had tested Rawl's determination. He acknowledged Rawl's persistence and pride in the Ashton family's legacy. Rawl raised his sword and ran towards his father, who encouraged him to strike. As Rawl's sword changed trajectory mid-attack, Melvin received a minor wound on his face. Smiling, Melvin admitted that it was time to recognize Rawl as a proud swordsman, urging him to go and explore the world. During their journey, they stopped in a forest to rest, and Rawl asked Philip, a seasoned knight, about their distance to their destination. Philip, experienced and powerful, provided the information. They had a diverse group of knights, trainees, and cavalry, all with grade B or higher potential talent. Rawl knew they needed to become stronger to halt their county's decline. A man named Jake inquired about the large group's purpose, but Philip defended Rawl's decision, emphasizing that Rawl had a plan for their destination. The free city of Mia. Rawl intended to bring them there because it was a strategic location filled with quests, hidden items, and resources for player progression. The system suddenly alerted Rawl to an update, unlocking the Connect community, a new guild category, and an adventure quest starting line. Upon arriving in the free city Mia, Rawl was pleasantly surprised to find that the features of Connect were more accessible than he had anticipated. As he entered Mia, he discovered that his role as a quest and skill collector had already been registered, allowing him to access new quests right away. This development amazed him, and he wondered if he could unlock even more features by meeting certain requirements. A knock on the carriage door interrupted his thoughts, and Jake informed him that he could meet with the mayor immediately. Asked what he wanted to do, Rawl replied that he would, of course, meet with the mayor. Meanwhile, at the main castle, the mayor of Mia, Raldo, inquired about Rawl's visit. Raldo's butler informed him that Rawl Ashton, the weakest son of County Ashton, had arrived with 50 people. Raldo wondered why Rawl was there and suspected it might be for the fresh air, but he also saw an opportunity to extract money from Rawl due to his family's income from monster materials. He ordered his butler to let them in. When Rawl entered, he warmly greeted Raldo, who reciprocated the welcome but wore a seemingly insincere smile. Raldo asked Rawl why he had come to Mia, and Rawl mentioned his interest in training. Raldo agreed that Mia was an excellent place for training, which Rawl found suspicious. Raldo then asked if Rawl had any specific place in mind, and Rawl requested permission to enter the cursed forest, shocking Raldo with the audacious request. Initially, Raldo hesitated, citing the forest's danger, but Rawl mentioned a gratuity of 500,000 gold, which prompted Raldo to grant permission. Rawl knew that this access to the cursed forest would help him grind and gain rewards to ascend and connect. As he walked through Mia with Jake and Philip, he couldn't help but notice the city's imbalance. It was designed for many players, but as the closed beta had only him as a player, it faced a crisis. Despite the economic downturn, Rawl had another motive for coming to Mia: real estate. He planned to purchase cheap lands that would eventually skyrocket in value as luxury houses, guild buildings, and apartments were built. He also considered Mia a potential safe haven in the future if war broke out, making his real estate investments even more crucial. He was determined not to be financially outmaneuvered by major guilds this time around. Later, as they dealt with paperwork, Jake hesitated to sign it, mentioning his mother's advice about being cautious with documents. Rahl, impatient, urged him to sign, but Jake's caution persisted. Nonetheless, the paperwork was eventually assembled. He informed the lady at the Battle Association's Nia branch office that a total of 51 members had registered for the guild. At first, he believed he had created the world's first guild in a playerless environment, making it the most advanced guild. He couldn't wait to see the bewildered expressions on his comrades' faces. Meanwhile, Jake worried about facing his mother's wrath later. At the Battle Association's Mia branch office, he eagerly announced his turn, and the lady welcomed him, asking how she could assist him. He expressed his interest in skill books and inquired about the highest rank they offered. Skill books contained various skills that could be learned by careful reading, with ranks ranging from F to S. The lady explained that their branch office provided up to rank C skill books, but rank C books were reserved for VIP customers. To become a VIP, one could achieve it through contributions, completing quests, or significant purchases, though the latter required substantial spending. He asked about the cost and was told it was 10,000 gold. Placing a bag of gold on the table, he inquired about seeing the D-rank skill books first. The lady inquired about his preference, whether it was for sword, bow, magic, or shield skills. He decided to explore all of them. Later, as they all carried stacks of books, Jake wondered if they really needed so many books, finding them cumbersome. He assured them that while it might seem bothersome now, these books would help them advance to higher levels. Philip suggested they could have purchased power armor with the money spent on the books, but he encouraged them to be patient, assuring them that they would see the benefits soon. Arriving at his apartment room, he surveyed the mountain of books before him and began to question if he had overdone it. He knew that players had limits on the number of skills they could use, and having numerous skills might not be practical. Recalling the two unknown items in the inventory when he first inhabited Rahl's body, he realized they were the sealed skill decks. The recent quest had finally allowed him to use them. Opening his inventory, he discovered that one of the items was indeed the sealed skill decks, leading him to believe that completing the quest had activated them. Upon examining the quest collector, he found an unknown grade quest instructing him to collect at least 10 skill books and register them in the skill decks, with additional rewards based on the book types. The reward for completing it was skill deck activation, with extra rewards including unlocking traits and acquiring skills. Determined, he grabbed some books, figuring he needed to open the decks and hold the skill book for registration. To his astonishment, the skill decks activated on their own as a strong purple light emanated from them and flew into the other skill books. Words appeared on the deck's book, prompting him to release the book he was holding. He couldn't believe it had worked, and he noticed the sliver of mana and the book was gone. Wondering if there was a way to register them all at once, the books suddenly levitated in mid-air, accompanied by another burst of purple light that connected the deck's book to the floating skill books. Once the process was complete, he inspected the deck's book, curious if it understood his intentions. Amazed by the successful activation of the skill decks, he eagerly checked his quest status, confirming its completion. The rare skill decks had been activated, unlocking his X-grade trait, Skill Collector, and granting him the S-grade trait, Copycat. Intrigued, he clicked on Skill Collector, discovering that its effect was to activate the skill decks. On the other hand, Copycat slightly increased the chance of acquiring skills from skill books. As he inspected Copycat, he noticed its mastery was at beginner level 3, allowing him to steal skills from examined opponents and register them in the decks. With increased mastery, he could acquire higher ranked skills with enhanced power, making him realize how potent this ability was, the power to steal and use someone else's skills. The system revealed that the skill deck was of rare grade and upgradable, bound by special requirements. Currently, it stored records of 525 skills, resembling the mythical item, Skill Dex, which he had received just before his previous death. While certain aspects from his past life, such as the psychokinesis trait and items, had come with him, his skills had been reset, and this replica was no exception. Curiosity piqued, he glanced at his inventory, where only the 3 grade X traits and 1 item remained, leaving him wondering about their hidden potential. The following day, the knights were bewildered by the appearance of the system and clamored for explanations regarding the status window and guild chat. They urgently sought guidance from a priest. Meanwhile, the butler, Bernard, greeted him with a sleepy gaze. He had stayed awake all night engrossed in the skill decks. After exchanging pleasantries, he inquired if Bernard had explained things to the knights, to which Bernard affirmed his fulfillment of the task. Excitedly, he asked Bernard about his experience with the skill book. Bernard nodded in confirmation. Bernard, a servant of the Ashton family and Ivan's stepson, had worked for the county from a young age. Ivan had personally trained him. Bernard possessed an exceptional memory and a knack for swift execution, making him an ideal choice. Furthermore, Bernard demonstrated his ability by releasing wind from his hand, leaving him in awe. He commended Bernard's skills, knowing he had the power to control the wind. The system revealed Bernard's stats, affiliations, talents, potential talent, and unique traits. Despite some stat deficiencies, Bernard was well suited for his role as a servant. Having completed his preparations, he instructed Bernard to get ready, leaving Bernard puzzled about the purpose. He disclosed that they were departing as soon as the knights adapted to their situation, heading toward God's domain in the Cursed Forest. Later, within the Cursed Forest, an ogre hurled its axe at him, shattering the ground. Swiftly, he dodged the attack and taunted the ogre for its sluggishness. He retaliated with a punch, causing the ogre's head to explode before his fist could connect. He dropped to the ground just as the ogre's lifeless body crumpled. He called for the others to reveal themselves. A horde of augurs emerged from their hiding spots, acknowledging his strength and intent to kill him. The ogre leader rallied the others, ordering a charge. The ogres, driven by their leader's command, rushed toward him in unison, and he confidently stood his ground, daring them to come forth in the Cursed Forest of God's domain. Specifically, God's domain referred not only to a grinding zone but encompassed the entirety of Mira. In this blessed city, players could recover from injuries and revive upon death, making it the ultimate sanctuary. Inside the forest, the blessing only extended to monsters, which meant that the monster population remained constant even after their demise. Humans, on the other hand, couldn't be resurrected within the Cursed Forest and couldn't carry items obtained from monster hunts beyond its boundaries. Such items would disintegrate into ashes upon leaving the forest, signifying the divine prohibition against mortals possessing divine relics. However, this restriction did not apply to players who could take these items outside with the assistance of the system. While the battle with the ogres raged on, Philip questioned Jake's constant chatter, reminding him that their young master, Rawl, was handling the situation. Rawl, engrossed in combat with the ogres, exhibited remarkable power. When only the ogre leader remained, it inquired about his extraordinary abilities, leading him to demonstrate his psychokinesis by manipulating weapons on the ground. He asked the ogre leader if this was the power in question. The leader, bewildered, watched as the weapons flew toward him, ultimately dismembering him. Rawl introduced the power as psychokinesis. As Jake and Philip continued their tasks, Jake acknowledged their progress during their training, attributing their success to Rawl's guidance. He then alerted Rawl to a message in the guild chat. Rawl examined the message and, to Philip's dismay, realized the dire situation it conveyed. He decided they needed to return to Mira immediately. Meanwhile, in their Mira apartment, tension escalated as one of Rawl's men found himself facing a sword-wielding intruder. The intruder lamented that they should have acted sooner and subsequently stabbed Rawl's man, explaining that restraining themselves had become increasingly challenging in light of the presence of Ashton's heirs. Another man, armed with a bloody sword, supported the first, asserting that their earlier warnings had fallen on deaf ears. He too stabbed one of Rawl's men, prompting a question about their motives. Disregarding the inquiry, the second man slashed another of Rawl's men and reproached his siblings for their disruptive behavior. The confrontation unfolded among three individuals: Raymond, the eldest son of Count Randall Vi, Jerry, the second son, and Cale, the third son. Rawl's injured subordinate warned Raymond that they would regret their actions, but before he could complete his statement, Raymond ruthlessly stabbed him and extracted the blade. Amidst the victim's cries of pain, Raymond continued his merciless assault, all while taunting the man. Jerry chimed in, suggesting that they should handle Rawl in a similar manner. However, Cale interjected, reminding Jerry that noble families should not engage in swordplay within the Free City. Raymond brushed off Cal's concerns and questioned why they should care about the consequences when they could simply deny their involvement. He expressed indifference toward the situation, believing that they could easily escape repercussions. Ramon, still undeterred, argued that their plan had merit, allowing them to crush the Ashton family. He even entertained the idea that their great-grandfather might commend them for their actions. However, as the leader of the Ashton household, Rawl's head suddenly exploded into a shower of gore. Cale, his voice trembling, called out to his brothers, who turned around to witness Rawl's shocking demise. A furious Robble confronted the brothers, condemning their heinous act as an affront to Ashton County. He threatened retribution far beyond a mere death sentence. Ramon, Jerry, and Cale gawked in disbelief at Robble's intervention. Jerry questioned Robble's sanity and dared him to lay a hand on a member of the esteemed Randall family. Cale inquired about the whereabouts of the knights and how Rawle had made it to Mira. One of the knights, held at sword point by Philip, nervously responded that they had believed themselves to be the primary force of the Ashton family. Philip reported that they had surrounded the Randall Knights, ensuring there were no civilians nearby. Jake and Bernard stood vigilantly, watching their adversaries closely. Rawle used his psychokinesis to levitate his injured men, instructing Bernard to transport them to safety. With sword in hand, Rawle proclaimed his intent to handle the situation himself. He recognized that Randall County bore similarities to Ashton County as one of the 5 warrior families in the Reuben Kingdom. Unlike the Ashton family, however, the Randalls had a relatively shorter history. To secure their position, they consistently produced exceptional knights, made significant contributions, and vanquished their rivals. Their current target was Ashton County, which had dwindled in power due to its prolonged absence of a swordmaster. Engaging the Ashtons posed no risk, for they were the least politically inclined of the 5 warrior families. Historically, conflicts between these families had often been initiated by the Randalls, with their numerous swordmasters. Jerry observed Rawle's unusual strength and noted that he had seemingly conjured a sword from thin air. The Randall knight behind Jerry, under Philip's sword pointing, cautiously reached for his own blade. Yet Rawle reacted swiftly, swinging his sword to strike the knight, who cried out in pain. The Randall Knights were dumbfounded by this turn of events, prompting Jake to sheath his weapon and defer to Rawle's decision. He instructed his men to lower their swords. One of the formidable Randall Knights questioned their sanity, believing that it was better to engage in battle. Cale charged toward this knight, wielding a massive mace to gather momentum. Rawle admonished Cale, distinguishing their current situation from training. However, a sudden, precise sword slash sliced through the air, cleaving Cale in two before he could deliver his strike. Cale's agonized scream filled the air as Jerry desperately called out to his fallen brother. Furious, Jerry cursed the knights who stood idly by and demanded to know why they weren't taking action. Frustrated and compelled by the circumstances, the knight leader, Jeremy, reluctantly drew his sword. He had hesitated, reluctant to confront a mere 15-year-old boy, but watching his comrades fall compelled him to intervene. Jeremy's name, age, and stats were displayed by the system. 37 years old, level 65, leader of the Guard Knights, and a beginner sword expert. His affiliations included Randall County and Randall Knights. He possessed a grade B potential talent, with stats that included 66 for strength, 72 for agility, 68 for stamina, 48 for intelligence, 63 for willpower, 70 for mana, and 55 for senses. Jeremy and the other knights brandished their swords, with Jeremy, nicknamed the Rapier, as the Randall family's primary weapon. They were elite fighters, and their level advantage over Rawle was evident. Jeremy at level 65 and the other elites at level 60, while Rawle's current level stood at 45. Realizing he couldn't win under normal circumstances, Rawle found himself facing their pointed weapons. One of the knights questioned why Rawle persisted, suggesting he had already done enough. The other knight asserted that they had tolerated him long enough. Regardless of his status as a young master, Rawle abruptly appeared before one of the knights, launching a precise slash that struck the man's abdomen. He gripped his sword tightly, raising it backward to increase the force behind his strike, utilizing his bear strike skill infused with bear aura. Another knight inquired about his actions, but Rawle merely cut the man's stomach, causing him to cry out in pain. Jeremy, on the other hand, lunged toward Rawle, seemingly appearing out of nowhere to strike. Despite being pushed back by Jeremy's attack, Rawle managed to deflect it in time. Jeremy expressed surprise that 2 of his elite knights had fallen so swiftly. Rawle remembered hearing rumors about his own weakness and lack of swordsmanship skills. Jeremy then drew his secondary weapon, a parrying dagger, hinting that he would take the fight more seriously. He pointed his sword at Rawle, inviting him to challenge him. Rawle noticed Jeremy's unusual combination of weapons, a parrying dagger and a rapier, which made him wonder if Jeremy was employing Randall County's sword skill known as Shooting Star. Jeremy grinned, acknowledging Rawl's bravery, and reminded him that wounds healed in Mia, insinuating that Rawl couldn't face them all alone. Rawl retorted that he believed Jeremy and his knights had not trained since arriving in Mia, catching Jeremy off guard. Rawl pointed to the trembling soldiers in the distance as proof of their inexperience with death. Jeremy, sensing Rawl's perceptive nature and threat potential, ordered his man to cover him from behind. The knight assured Jeremy he'd handle it. Jeremy then leaped into action, hurling his sword toward Rawl. Rawl defended himself with his own weapon, and Jeremy, along with his man, relentlessly attacked Rawl. They inflicted wounds on his face, arms, and other parts of his body. Spotting an opportunity, the knight charged forward to attack Rawl, taking Jeremy by surprise. Despite Jeremy's shouts to stop, Rawl swung his sword, cleaving the man in half. Jeremy berated his fallen comrade as he recognized the urgency of the situation. He employed his Randall sword vision skill and activated Shooting Star, a formidable skill renowned for its one-on-one combat effectiveness. Rawl, even with his psychokinesis, found himself struggling but resolved to persevere. He aimed to push Jeremy back, maintaining his dominance in the fight. He glared at Jeremy, who grew increasingly infuriated and demanded an explanation for Rawl's arrogant demeanor. Rawl calmly replied with 100%, puzzling Jeremy. Then, in a swift motion, Rawl swung his sword, causing Jeremy to release his weapons into the air. Rawl's eyes followed the trajectory of Jeremy's weapons as they soared. He drove his own sword deep into the ground, ready to seize the opportunity. The system indicated that his opponent's skill examination had reached 100%, signaling that the copycat was prepared for use. Following the system's guidance, Rawl aimed to engrave the skill into the decks, employing his psychokinetic abilities to snatch Jeremy's weapons from mid-air. With a swift motion, the weapons flew directly into Rawl's hands. The system prompted him to activate the copycat Randall sword skill, Shooting Star, a grade B skill. Angered, he activated it, directing the weapons towards Jeremy. The Shooting Star skill surged forth, targeting Jeremy in return. Jeremy, shocked, questioned how Rawl had managed to execute the skill. In the midst of the attack, he covered himself with his arms, writhing in pain, demanding to know who had taught Rawl this skill. Rawl appeared beneath Jeremy, revealing that he had been the one to teach him. Confused, Jeremy asked for clarification, but Rawl simply stabbed him in the side and withdrew the blade, causing Jeremy to kneel in agony. The system displayed a rank S bonus, indicating that the Randall sword skill, Shooting Star, grade B, had advanced to intermediate level 1. Rawl had successfully engraved this skill into his skill decks. The system further instructed him to equip the skill in the skill deck selection slot to enable continuous use. Rawl contemplated his newfound abilities and the overpowered nature of the rank S skill Copycat. He understood that Copycat allowed him to copy his opponent's skill, but limited him to one skill at a time. Additionally, he could not lose sight of his target during its activation, or the examination rate would reset. Only in one-on-one combat could he steal a skill effectively. Rawl accessed his skill display, revealing his default skills. Ashton Vision, Sword Skill Bear Crush, Grade A+, at Intermediate Level 2. Psychokinesis, Grade S at Intermediate Level 2. Mind Skill, Grade A at Intermediate Level 1. Copycat, Grade S at Beginner Level 6. And Basic Meditation, Grade E at Beginner Level 8. His skill deck select slots included Flash and Shield, both Grade C at Beginner Level 6, and a random skill slot, Iron Fist, Grade D at Intermediate Level 1. Grateful for his skill decks, which allowed him to utilize 3 more skills, he decided to use the new skill here. However, his attention was drawn to a voice beside him. Jerry fearfully questioned Rawl's identity and how he wielded the Randall sword skill. Rawl acknowledged Jerry's presence, admitting he had overlooked him. He ordered Philip to eliminate them each time they revived for an hour. Philip respectfully agreed and instructed his men accordingly. Jerry pleaded for mercy in his fear, but Rawl remained resolute, understanding that blood must be met with blood. The enemy's agonized screams resonated, and Rawl reminded himself that this was no longer a game, but the harsh reality he faced. He was determined not to falter, even if it meant wading through a sea of blood. Meanwhile, Raldo, who had been observing from a distance, pondered the chaotic situation. He realized that his plan had gone awry. The original scheme had been to mobilize the guards to aid the Randall Knights in their assault against Rawl. However, Rawl had managed to defeat 15 knights single-handedly. Raldo anxiously wondered how Raul had discovered his presence and contemplated if Raul had concealed a county swordmaster, potentially uncovering all of his schemes. He decided that he would have to be more diplomatic with Ashton County in the future. A few minutes later, in his room, Raldo reflected on the situation, realizing that he may have gone too far in his actions. Considering his recent accomplishments, he couldn't help but feel satisfied with the rewards he'd received for completing the sudden quest, Rival Family Challenge. The system displayed the results. His rescue and punishment objectives were both successfully accomplished. As a reward, he gained 30,000 experience points, 30,000 coins, and a random B-grade skill book draw ticket. But there was more, an additional 5,000 gold, a magical bag capable of holding a carriage's worth of luggage, and a unique grade rapier and main go set confiscated from those Randall County scoundrels. Examining the B-grade skill book draw ticket, he mused on his previous luck with the tournament skill book reward. He hoped for at least a mid-tier skill this time and placed the ticket on the table. With a hopeful thought, he broke the ticket in half, releasing a bright light that surprised him. The skill book he acquired was named Rivera Spearmanship, a grade B skill. Joyfully, he realized the importance of spearmanship for his upcoming journey to the capital and felt fortunate for his newfound luck. With the reward secured, he knew there was one more crucial task he needed to accomplish in Mia. It would require a month of investment, but he was determined to succeed. A week later in the forest, he focused on honing his combat skills. He launched his sword, striking down the ogre in front of him. Sweat dripped from his brow as the system displayed his achievement, reaching level 51 and satisfying the requirements for promotion. He now had to decide on his potential promotion. The system confirmed his job as a sword user and his proficiency in job-related skills, including Ashton family hereditary swordsmanship, Randall swordsmanship, and psychokinesis, had increased to mid-level 2. This allowed his job to evolve into sword expert and his beginner psychokinesis to become intermediate psychokinesis. Philip and Jake marveled at his rapid progress, congratulating him on becoming a sword expert at just 15 years old. With a flourish, he raised his hand, causing nearby stones to float. A shout and a swing of his hand sent the stones hurtling towards a massive tree, shattering it into fragments. Philip praised his prowess, while Jake playfully suggested taking a break. Philip, however, promptly reprimanded Jake, emphasizing the need for sleep to catch up with Raul's accomplishments. Jake laughed it off, admitting it was a jest, but Philip insisted Jake was all talk. They agreed that Raul deserved a rest, but intended to keep their progress under wraps for now. Having hunted enough monsters and achieved considerable leveling up, Raul decided it was time to depart. Philip chided Jake to mind his words, and Jake, now realizing he had baited all the traps, pouted and asked Philip what he meant. With their work complete, Raul urged them to return, eagerly awaiting the Empire's response. Meanwhile, in the bustling streets of Mia, Nekia, an alchemist, stretched her body after a day's work. She observed that potions were gaining popularity, possibly due to the efforts of Ashton County, who had begun bringing in monster byproducts. Monsters rarely appeared in the cursed forest, making it challenging to obtain the necessary materials. Thanks to Ashton County's contributions, Nekia could now produce potions regularly. Moreover, county residents frequently visited her shop, inquiring about any events during the night and providing a sense of connection within the community. Nakia, an alchemist in Mia, had come to rely on the support of Ashton County residents. They often inquired about her well-being and if she needed any assistance. While stepping out of her store, she found herself thinking about Raul, who seemed a bit peculiar but undeniably good-looking. Blushing at her own thoughts, she chided herself for entertaining such notions. After all, Raul was just 15 years old, a good 8 years younger than her, and a noble to boot. The peculiar nature of her musings attracted odd glances from people around her. She returned home, excited to announce her arrival to her younger sister, Nikki. However, her calls went unanswered, filling her with a sense of foreboding. As she searched for Nikki, a chilling sight caught her eye, a letter pinned to the bed by a knife. Trembling, she read the contents. The letter conveyed that Nikki had been abducted, and if Nakia wished to see her again, she mustn't breathe a word to anyone and await further instructions. Overwhelmed by fear and despair, Nakia sobbed, refusing to accept this terrible reality. With tears streaming down her face, Nakia realized she couldn't venture beyond the city walls, knowing Nikki's life hung in the balance. She'd heard whispers of kidnappings before, but never believed them to be true. Unsure of where to turn, Nakia considered seeking aid from the city government, but hesitated, fearing the kidnappers might be watching her every move. The city guards, she surmised, wouldn't extend their protection beyond the city limits. Consulting mercenaries from the Adventurer Guild would be time-consuming, leaving Nakia in a quandary. Then, a memory surfaced. Rawl had once told her that if she ever found herself in dire straits, she should seek him out. It was a slim hope, but it was her only option. Resolute and desperate, Nakia fled her home, racing to find Rawl. Rawl accessed the Connect community, entering a premium members-only information cafe that he had operated in his past life as a renowned player. The cafe had become a repository of invaluable information, housing countless hidden gems of knowledge about Connect. He was thrilled to find that it still existed, as it could aid his planning significantly. Searching for the link to the Free City Mura, he discovered a quest starting point at South Mura NPC. He believed he had considered every available quest, leaving him with only hope that things would go as intended. One of his men informed him of Nakia's presence, prompting him to contemplate if he could alter Nakia's fate. He instructed his men to treat Nakia with the utmost respect, well aware of her fearsome reputation as a mad alchemist and taboo destroyer. Nakia was notorious for conducting experiments on humans in her quest for vengeance against the Empire, even if it meant innocent civilians became collateral damage. However, the Nakia before him now was a desperate girl seeking his help. Placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, Rawl urged Nakia to calm down. He assured her that Nikki would be safe and promised to assist in any way he could. Overwhelmed, Nakia explained that her sister had been kidnapped and should have been home hours ago, under the care of their neighbor. She implored Rawl to rescue Nikki, blaming herself for the situation. Rawl reassured her, vowing to find Nikki and making Nakia aghast in disbelief. She begged him to save Nikki, and Rawl, confident in his belief of Nikki's whereabouts, promised to keep her informed. He instructed Nakia to stay put, as Bernard would assist her. Gracefully, Bernard advised Nakia to reach out as she required anything, assuring her that she had made the right choice. With their trust in Rawl's promises, they set out on their mission. Philip reported that Pierce was tracking them and had secured permission from Mayor Raldo. Rawl acknowledged this news with approval. The raid quest was directed at Free City Mura, with the primary goal being the elimination of the unknown rogues. The additional objective was the rescue of hostages and the eradication of the hideouts hidden within the forest. The quest description explained that a mysterious group of rogues had been causing trouble in the forests surrounding Nia City. Mayor Raldo had requested a decisive action against these rogues who had been involved in kidnappings and obstructing trade. The rewards for completing the mission were enticing: substantial experience points, coins, recognition from the mayor, and unknown items. Rawl inquired if Philip had already provided Mayor Raldo with the list of rogues, to which Philip confirmed that Raldo had promised rewards for this valuable information. Satisfied that he had thoroughly planned their mission and left no gaps, Rawl instructed his men to proceed. Jake, brimming with excitement, readily agreed, completely unaware that two spies were concealed in the nearby bushes. Meanwhile, within the forest, Pierce and the Ashton County Golden Bear Knights, along with Rawl's Guard Knights, continued their exploration. Pierce believed they were closing in on their target based on the telltale signs on the ground. It was time to initiate their operation. He leaped onto a tree branch, prepared to utilize his newly acquired skill. Activating his detection skill, he meticulously scoured the forest. To his astonishment, he spotted hidden men nearby, armed with bows and arrows. Phantom magic circles and barriers adorned the vicinity. Pierce knew he needed to report this discovery immediately. Rawl's message indicated they would arrive in 5 minutes. Recollecting the events of 5 months ago, he pondered Rawl's background. Rawl was the youngest son, known for his apparent weakness and lack of talent compared to his brothers. At first, many servants and knights hesitated to accompany him on his journey, and even when Rawl sought volunteers, few showed interest. It was during Rawl's visit to the Knights' training ground, where he personally engaged with the Knights, that Pierce's opinion began to shift. Rawl demonstrated Pierce's sword techniques himself, identifying the flaws and offering guidance. Initially skeptical about what a young boy like Rawl could teach him, Pierce decided to give it a chance. To his surprise, every swing of the sword felt smoother under Rawl's guidance. Rawl emphasized that Pierce's strength lay in agility, not brute force. He encouraged Pierce to enhance his archery skills, even though very few were aware of Pierce's bowmanship. Pierce realized that Rawl might be the one capable of helping him reach new heights. He believed that those who had rejected Rawl's offer were likely regretting their decision now. Pierce couldn't fathom why Rawl had concealed his true power, but the skill books Rawl had provided had elevated him to the high expert stage, allowing him to hone other skills as well. He mused that today might be the day when Rawl would unveil his true potential. Someone approached, prompting him to jump off a tree branch and bow respectfully. Alongside the other knights, he greeted the newcomer, who was none other than Pierce. His attention was soon drawn to an unknown rogue's hideout, marked as unknown grade and unknown size. The hideout exhibited a 3-circle or higher magic circle interfering with vision, and a 3rd circle magic that deterred anyone who approached. He faced a dilemma: should he destroy the magic circle or find another way in to gather vital information? He contemplated the situation, recognizing that rogue activities transcended different cities. Spies from the Kranan Empire posed a significant threat in Mia, disrupting player coordination. Known as the Imperial Hounds, they hunted players and blackmailed them to prevent unity. He understood the importance of dealing with them. He called upon Pierce, whose arrows found their mark, striking down the men hiding behind the magic circle. With the immediate threat eliminated, they cautiously entered the barrier. Near the entrance, there was no sign of anyone. He considered using a scroll to dispel the magic circle, but hesitated as he examined the flow of mana. He decided to forego the scroll and instead infused mana into his weapon. Retrieving his dagger from his inventory, he launched it towards the magical flow. The dagger struck the magic circle on the ground, causing it to slowly crack and ultimately shatter. It was a practical approach that saved him the expense of buying scrolls. Pierce, who had anticipated their young master's resourcefulness, summoned 2 men named Jackson and Nil to execute their prearranged plan. He assured them that he'd signal when it was time to enter, to which they readily agreed. Descending from the tree branch, Pierce confidently led the way, bolstered by the presence of elite knights. In his mind, he envisioned hunting down their enemies. He reminded himself that they didn't require captives and should finish off all the opponents. He emphasized the use of the rapier for the final blow. Jake, puzzled by the necessity of using a rapier in such a scenario, voiced his compliance, trusting their leader's judgment. Rawl assigned Pierce the task of locating the kidnapped individuals, with a priority on rescuing Nakia's younger sister, Nikki. Pierce acknowledged the directive, and Rawl called upon Philip, who readily agreed to assist. Employing his psychokinesis, Rawl instructed them to open the massive door that loomed before them. They ventured further into the tunnel, with Pierce casting a backward glance as he gradually faded from view. The system confirmed Pierce's successful infiltration of the enemy's base, prompting Rawl to prepare for the hunt. The cave's ceiling and wooden fences loomed around them, and the rogues' levels hovered around 30 to 31, not significantly different from typical thieves. Having checked their surroundings, Pierce was ready to make their move. Rawl took charge of the situation, signaling Jake and Philip to follow his lead with a raised hand. He quickly issued orders, instructing Jake to move left, Philip to head straight ahead, and he would take the right flank. With clenched fists, they sprinted toward their designated paths. Rawl raced up the stairs, leaving the men atop them bewildered as to his identity. In a flash, he materialized above them. Catching them off guard, he swiftly hurled his knives at their heads, taking them down with precision. As he landed on the stair handle, he snatched his bow and arrow from behind him. Without hesitation, he aimed the arrow at a guard and released it, eliminating his target. In the center of the action, Philip was engaged in fierce combat, slashing through the adversaries. On the left flank, Jake mirrored Philip's efforts. However, a lookout on the upper level caught sight of them and sounded the alarm, shouting about intruders. He ordered the guards to defend the fences and to eliminate the intruders. As the enemies multiplied, they began blocking Rawl's arrows. One of the rogues instructed his comrade to aim at Rawl and shoot him down. Arrows were unleashed toward Rawl, but he countered with his psychokinetic abilities, halting the incoming arrows in midair. One rogue questioned whether Rawl had deflected the arrows with some sort of magic, while another hastily called for backup from downstairs. The rogues rushed toward the stairs to confront Rawl directly. One of them declared that arrows were ineffective against him and suggested swarming him instead. Rawl repositioned his bow and drew his daggers, wielding them simultaneously. With a swift push, he sent a rogue hurtling backward, crashing into his companions, leaving everyone astonished. Utilizing his psychokinetic prowess, Rawl levitated the arrows strewn on the ground. He carefully arranged them around himself before soaring into the air, carrying his daggers, arrows orbiting him like a deadly halo. A rogue marveled, suspecting it to be magic and deeming it impossible. Rawl maneuvered the arrows with precision and directed them toward the rogues below. With a synchronized release, the arrows found their marks, hitting numerous rogues. Rawl observed his adversaries struggling against the onslaught while contemplating the need to exert more force to pierce through their armor. He gracefully leaped from the stair handle, descending upon a fleeing rogue. In a fluid motion, he impaled the man with his rapier. Turning his gaze back, Rawl witnessed Philip and Jake dispatching the remaining rogues. Some cried out to their comrades to flee, dubbing Rawl and his team as monsters. Another rogues begged for mercy when faced with Jake wielding the rapier, but Jake ruthlessly struck him down. Rawl noted Jake's reluctance to use the rapier, which he considered wasteful in terms of mana. He recalled that Ashton had cautioned Jake multiple times against revealing his swordsmanship skills, emphasizing the need to leave no traces behind. Nonetheless, Rawl wasn't overly concerned. He noticed someone attempting a sneak attack from behind, unaware of Pierce's presence. With impeccable timing, Pierce's arrow intercepted the attacker, sparing Jake from harm. Rawl acknowledged that they had nearly dealt with a smaller fry within the hideout. A few minutes later, Pierce offered his apologies, admitting that they had scoured the entire prison but found no sign of Nikki. Rawl comforted Pierce, assuring him that it was all right. He inquired if Pierce had briefed the captive villagers, to which Pierce confirmed that he had, providing them with clothing and sustenance while advising them to remain in one location until the battle concluded. Jake shared his concerns, questioning whether these adversaries were mere thieves. Rawl responded by highlighting the peculiarities of the situation. Firstly, Nikki, the kidnapped girl, was nowhere to be found. Secondly, among the numerous rogues, none stood out as distinct. Lastly, a magic circle was present at the entrance. Rawl inquired if anyone had spotted a wizard, but his companions shook their heads. Summing up his observations, Rawl concluded that the captives and important individuals were likely held elsewhere. Jake concurred but expressed concern about their ability to locate this place. Pierce chimed in, noting that he had investigated suspicious areas to no avail. He reasoned that a potent magic circle or system could be at play. Pierce proudly mentioned that it had been less than a month since he became a guild member, highlighting the challenges they faced in their mission. Rawl's keen eyes earned him the gratitude of his companions. He assured Pierce that no one would deceive his sharp gaze. With a confident smile, Rawl beckoned them to follow him, stating that he believed he knew where their adversaries were hiding. As they trailed behind Rawl, he instructed them to thoroughly search the fourth hut and promptly report any suspicious findings. They acknowledged his orders with determined affirmations. Rawl approached the room door cautiously, with Philip informing him that they hadn't come across anything unusual. Unfazed, Rawl asked if it was the fourth hut. Determination radiating from him, he retrieved his rapier from his inventory and rallied his team, declaring that the true challenge lay ahead. He forcefully kicked a table aside, lifted his rapier with both hands, and drove it into the floor with great force. The impact shattered the floor, revealing a concealed door underneath. Employing his psychokinetic abilities, he swung the door open, revealing a hidden staircase descending into the basement. Suddenly, they heard movement from below, prompting Rawl to caution his team that something was approaching. Without warning, a colossal monster's hand emerged from the underground, lunging towards Jake. Startled, Jake questioned what it was, then agilely evaded the grab in the nick of time. The immense creature, growling menacingly, emerged fully from the hole. Other monstrous beings ascended the stairs as Philip urged them not to disperse, emphasizing the importance of keeping them contained. The monster lunged at them, but Rawl leaped forward, rapier in hand, and struck the creature with precision. His piercing thrust elicited a howl of agony, driving the beast backward. Philip informed them that these were Imperial Demon Cavalry, noting their distinct vital points, unlike humans. Jake, curious about their presence in the hideout, attacked one of the Demon Cavalry from behind. He thrust his rapier into the creature's neck, sending it crashing onto the ground in pain. Rawl consulted the system, confirming that it was an incomplete Imperial Demon Cavalry, level 41, of Type 1 Crane and Imperial Demon Cavalry. Rawl recalled his past struggles with these creatures when he had attacked the Empire hideout in the starting city during his 6th month of playing the game. The punitive force, composed of top players who had undergone their second job change, had suffered a devastating defeat when the true Imperial Demon Cavalry emerged. The rankers, including himself, barely escaped, and players avoided the Empire's hideout for 6 months thereafter. Those previous Imperial Demon Cavalry had been complete and boasted an average level of nearly 50. Now facing incomplete Demon Cavalry with lower levels, and backed by his expert high-class knights, who were over level 80, Rawl had the advantage. Moreover, he could discern the randomly placed vital points on the Demon Cavalry. Rawl sprinted towards the approaching Imperial Demon Cavalry, leaping high into the air, With precise stabs, he targeted all of his vital points. He knew that striking these points was the key to victory. In mere moments, the Imperial Demon Cavalry was vanquished. Jake, still brimming with anger, kicked the lifeless demon, while Philip questioned the presence of the Imperial Demon Cavalry in this unexpected location. Facing the kingdom's front yard, Rawl contemplated their next move. Fierce suggested seeking backup, but Rawl firmly declined, emphasizing the captive's peril and the urgency of their rescue. Philip and Jake stepped forward, brandishing shields and reassuring Rawl that they would confront the enemies, urging him to focus on searching with Pierce. Though he longed to take an active role, Rawl understood the necessity of teamwork. He recognized that he'd still gain a share of the experience points, even if he didn't personally deliver the finishing blows. In this moment, he welcomed the opportunity to let his capable subordinates shine. Philip and Jake led the way, and as Jake opened the door, they agreed to eliminate the enemies efficiently. Inside, they were met with a grim sight. Lifeless bodies strewn across the floor and tubes filled with green liquid containing gruesome amalgamations of monsters and demon cavalry. Rawl expressed his shock at the audacity of conducting such gruesome experiments in another country's territory, surmising that the demon cavalry they fought might have been created from the kidnapped citizens. He reflected on the twisted nature of the Empire, once considering joining their ranks upon his reincarnation due to their looming dominance over the continent. However, he swiftly dismissed the notion as he couldn't serve an emperor who saw humans as mere tools. The Empire's brutal hierarchy subjected those without royal blood to a lifetime of labor, with execution looming for any who crossed the emperor. Suddenly, Philip directed Rawl's attention downward, revealing a group of magicians casting a spell while a knight urged them to activate it to secure their exit route. Pierce's report identified 4 knights, 3 wizards, and 10 Imperial Demon Cavalry. The wizards aimed to activate a magic circle in front of the cave. Philip took charge, volunteering to handle the knights. He assigned Pierce to deal with the wizards and instructed Jake to confront the pursuing Imperial Demon Cavalry. Jake reluctantly agreed, and Rawl sighed in relief. Pierce initiated the engagement by loosing an arrow at one of the wizards. The shout of an intruder alert sounded, and their adversaries leaped down to confront them. Rawl focused on a 5th circle wizard, knowing that ordinary arrows wouldn't breach their magical barriers. He harnessed his psychokinetic abilities to guide the arrow's path, breaking the barrier into pieces and striking one of the wizards in the head. The interruption of their escape through the teleport gate brought relief to Rawl. The shattered magic circle had foiled their exit route. The leader of the knights swiftly commanded his men to release the seal and annihilate their intruders, met with resounding agreement. Shock washed over Rawl as he observed Philip charge forward. The highly skilled knight, boasting a level exceeding 90, struggled against their adversaries. Utilizing his detection skills, Rawl identified the knight leader as McDowell, a level 71 sword expert from the Cran and Empire. McDowell held the position of Imperial Hound in the Mirror Branch Manager, showing remarkable loyalty and resistance to fear. A hint of suspicion crept into Rawl's thoughts as he contemplated the increase in McDowell's stats. Could it be attributed to the red tattoo's influence? Meanwhile, Jake, battling Imperial Demon Cavalry, grew perplexed by the unfolding situation. He questioned if the knights were under the influence of drugs and inquired whether swords would suffice to vanquish them. Rawl responded, acknowledging the challenges and highlighting the need for caution. As Jake continued his combat, Rawl reflected on his trust in the abilities of Philip and Pierce, admitting that their current situation was straining their resources. Jake, noticing Rawl's struggles, expressed his confusion. Amidst the chaos, Rawl attacked one of the knights, swiftly identifying their weak points and severing an arm. McDowell, observing Rawl, speculated about their origins, puzzled by their unconventional swordsmanship. McDowell confronted Jake, questioning their identity and their right to insult the Imperial Hounds. However, upon noticing Rawl at the center of the conflict, McDowell smiled, believing he had found a path to survival. McDowell rallied his men, demanding they sacrifice their lives for the Emperor and the Empire's honor. The knights transformed into demons, their dark powers unleashed. A knight attacked, wielding the formidable Black Sacrifice skill, leaving Rawl in awe of their strength and sensing an ominous plan in motion. With a system warning, Rawl urged Jake to exercise caution. McDowell charged toward them, clad in Empire K-type power armor, rated E with a 0.8 CP output, an uptime of 2 hours, a mana stone consumption operation mode, and a 3-circle defense skill. Philip attempted to intercept McDowell in the center, but his strike was nullified by a force field. McDowell closed in, launching a powerful fist toward Philip, who cried out in panic. The battle was drawing to a close. McDowell unleashed a devastating attack that shattered the ground, yet confusion gripped him as he pondered whether his adversary wore power armor. Rawl recognized the F-class power armor that clung to him as a shifting mechanism. Despite its appearance, his instincts warned of its latent danger. But before McDowell could strike again, he paused to inquire about the armor. McDowell's subsequent attack aimed to end Rawl, but it left him contemplating the massive hand about to strike. Rawl intended to evade using the C-rank skill, Flash. But an unforeseen obstacle emerged. The system intervened, detecting a hostile power armor known as Rignitator. An unknown Grade X unique trait distinguished this armor, accompanied by expertise in swordsmanship and middle-class psychokinesis. Though incomplete due to insufficient mana, intermediate-grade psychokinesis supplemented the activation. Amazement filled Rawl as he examined the barrier-equipped armor, rendering him immune to physical attacks weaker than a Mona blade and capable of nullifying at least 3 circle magic. While power armor was a distant dream for players, it remained vital for NPCs facing player confrontations. Rawl found himself clad in this coveted power armor, baffling McDowell, who continued his futile attacks. McDowell's frustration grew as his strikes proved ineffective. Rawl retreated to evade the relentless assault, gradually dispelling his power armor. With his rapier in hand, he activated the Shooting Star skill, forcing McDowell to swear in fear. Closing in on his adversary, Rawl unleashed the full might of Shooting Star, shattering McDowell's barrier. In a final act of desperation, McDowell invoked an ominous transformation, merging his body with the power armor. Rawl observed this peculiar metamorphosis, but remained uncertain about its implications. The system alerted Rawl that Rator had detected a forbidden source of power, prompting his curiosity. As McDowell's body underwent a drastic change, Rawl found himself enveloped in a radiant light. The power armor encased him entirely, revealing his true form. Facing the transformed McDowell, a growl escaped the foe, who lunged forward to attack. Rawl, unfazed, raised an armored arm to block McDowell's blow. The colossal clash caused all onlookers to pause, fixated on the confrontation between these titanic forces. McDowell's power armor began to fracture slowly, and Rawl, demonstrating exceptional psychokinesis, prepared to respond. With McDowell defeated, Rawl watched as the power armor slowly crumbled, squeezing the life out of McDowell, who cried out in agony. He taunted McDowell to piss off, as the Imperial Hound's power armor disintegrated into pieces, leaving him lifeless on the ground. The Raider's effect began to wane, and Rawl couldn't believe he had accomplished it, narrowly within the time limit. Coughing up blood, Rawl's condition alarmed Philip and Jake, who rushed to his side, fearing for his well-being. Rawl reassured them with a raised hand, reflecting on the inexplicable sensation he had just experienced. It was unlike anything he had felt as a player, hinting at a glimpse of eternal power. Determined to attain such strength independently one day, he vowed to himself. The shattered magic circle revealed a pocket teleportation device and a Mona stone, which Rawl decided to explore later. Pierce reported that they had located Nikki and the other hostages, but sadly some of them did not survive. Accepting the reality, Rawl instructed Pierce to collect their belongings for return to their families. As they moved towards the cave's exit, Jake questioned whether leaving valuable items behind was wise. Rawl asked if he wanted to take them, to which Jake eagerly agreed, emphasizing their significance. Rawl acknowledged the potential importance of McDowell's power armor as evidence against the Empire's spies, but deemed it wiser to focus on their growth and influence expansion, rather than provoking the Imperial Hounds. He assured Jake that his decision was part of the plan and offered him a bonus and a vacation, leaving Jake thrilled. Turning to Pierce, Rawl sought a report on their mission. Pierce affirmed their successful execution of the plan, prompting a smile from Rawl. He decided to observe their adversaries' reactions, curious about the expressions they would display after falling for their trick. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Raymond questioned their guide about their progress and yelled at them to confirm their direction. They believed they had tracked Rawl to the forest but had encountered difficulties. Recovering from the shrine ordeal, they had lost money and swords. Raman, in particular, felt they had lost to Rawl due to the city's mana skill restrictions. Their guide pointed toward a cave, expressing concern about its danger. Raymond insisted they enter the cave, convinced it held the key to finding Rawl. Moments later, their joy erupted upon discovering a pile of gold on the ground. Raymond happily relayed the discovery to his brothers, ready to press on in their pursuit of Rawl. The discovery of Rawl's absence in the forest didn't dampen their spirits. Instead, they found other valuable treasures. Jerry pointed out the assortment of magic items, artifacts, and even bodies of wanted individuals. Among these discoveries, the power armor stood out as the most significant. Back in the city, the knights responsible for guarding it were taken aback as they spotted people on horseback approaching. Their young master was among them, and they thanked him for his assistance. The knights reported that they had successfully rescued the hostages from a hideout in the East Forest. Their master praised their efforts and inquired about the others. They explained that they had arrived after completing their mission. These knights were part of Rawl's training and among his first guild members. 6 of them had reached the expert level through rigorous training, while the rest were on the cusp of achieving the same feat. All of them were proficient in using mana and had mastered Ashton County's sword skills. Rawl instructed them to retrieve supplies from the north and west hideouts, confident that with over 100 members, normal rogues wouldn't stand a chance against them. They all agreed and proceeded on their mission. Upon reaching their destination, they encountered a surprised knight guarding the area. He questioned whether they were from Ashton County and why they had hostages in tow. Observing the hostages in their care, he sought confirmation from the captain on the ground, which was affirmed. The captain explained that they had guided the civilians there as per his request, and Rawl commended their actions. The worried civilians, desperate to reunite with their children, asked if Rawl had been the one to rescue the hostages. Their hope was palpable, and Rawl reassured them while holding Nikki in his arms. Nakia, in particular, was overjoyed to see Nikki safe and expressed her gratitude repeatedly. Rawl informed Nakia that Nikki was currently in poor condition and would require treatment at the mansion. He called Bernard and learned that a priest was already at the mansion. Looking at Nakia, Rawl contemplated the lives he had saved and the changes he had wrought. He wondered if Nakia's path to becoming a grand alchemist would take a different course now, altering the future of the items and potions she had created. Acknowledging that he still needed Nakia for the county's future, Rawl recognized that everything had begun to change when he returned to the past. He no longer hesitated to shape someone's future, even if it meant altering history. He remembered that he could have saved more lives if he had acted more swiftly instead of focusing solely on quests and gaining Nakia's interest. It was a moment of self-reflection. Rawl noticed an elderly woman holding gloves, crying in pain, lamenting her missing son. He realized that some people, particularly those from lower classes, hadn't even been given a chance. He pondered how his actions had been solely driven by quests and leveling up, neglecting conversations with people unrelated to his missions. He questioned whether he should continue following the system-determined quests and began to wonder if his approach limited his horizons and options. Rawl believed that he needed to discover something unique that only he, as a nobleman of Connect, could achieve, something beyond what a player could accomplish. Turning to Philip, he asked for personal information about the disheartened people present, determined to take a different path. Rawl instructed Philip to provide consolation money to those who had lost their families or had family members kidnapped. He also asked Philip to help them find jobs. While Rawl felt bad about adding more tasks to Philip's workload, Philip assured him that the others wouldn't refuse the request. Philip then glanced toward Jake, hinting that there might be someone who would decline. This annoyed Jake, who questioned why Philip was looking at him, as he didn't mind doing good deeds either. Jake then asked Rawl if he would be given some time off after providing financial support. The grieving individuals expressed their gratitude and wished Rawl a long life as they walked away. Rawl patted his horse, considering that the support from Mia's citizens would be valuable when dealing with other guilds. While it had all been calculated, it felt like killing 2 birds with 1 stone since the citizens appreciated it. He also thought it would be a good idea to stay in the area a bit longer to level up and gain practical experience. Unbeknownst to them, a man observed Rawl with a smile from behind. The following day in the main castle in Mia, Raldo expressed his gratitude to Rawl for alleviating many of his concerns. Rawl humbly replied that even without him, he would have resolved the situation, but Raldo disagreed, stating that Rawl's report had been instrumental. Without it, they would have been in significant trouble. Rawl agreed that the situation had taken him by surprise. He also mentioned that it was unexpected for the Empire's forces to infiltrate Mia, which was clearly within the territory of the Kingdom of Reuben. He noted that judging by their hideout, they had been working secretly for quite some time, training demonic soldiers. Raldo mentioned past missing cases but explained that they couldn't take action due to the treaty. According to the treaty, Mia wasn't allowed to maintain an army and could only operate guards who couldn't fully utilize their capabilities outside the city. He also informed Rawl that someone from Randall VI County had come and claimed to have destroyed the spies' hideout, demanding compensation. Raul shared his expectations but was interrupted by Raldo, who suggested making it look like Randall the I County was responsible. Raldo believed it would be beneficial for Raul, as he would gain a great reputation and potentially receive rewards from the royal court. Raul thanked Raldo for his concern but asked him to proceed as instructed. Raldo commented on Raul's cautious nature and suggested he should have more fun for his age. However, he assured Raul that he would handle the matter well, emphasizing that taking care of the Empire's hideout would be Randall's contribution and responsibility to attract the Empire's attention. Then Raldo asked Raul what he wanted as a reward, as he didn't think money would suffice. Raul mentioned hearing about Raldo's mansion having a study with valuable books and asked if he could take a look at them. Raldo gladly granted permission and even offered to let him take one of the books. However, Raul hinted that it wouldn't be enough and asked to see the secret treasury, where he could choose one item as a gift. Raldo agreed to his request, appreciating his generosity. Raldo, showing off his generosity, excitedly offers Raul a reward. Raul notes that Raldo is quite cool in his generosity, although some people call him stingy. He wonders why Raldo is showcasing this when he has to give him a reward anyway. Raul arrives at Raldo's library, and the butler encourages him to explore at his leisure. He decides to pick one of the books, realizing that they are skill books, not miscellaneous books. Opening one of them, the system asks him if he'd like to acquire the B-rank skill book Thunder Pierce. He's amazed that all the books in the library are skill books, and he feels satisfied just looking at them. Realizing he might not have another chance to visit, he carefully searches for the book he desires. Suddenly, he notices a subtle light coming from a book on the top shelf. The system reveals it's a study of ancient rituals, spells, and instructional methods for mental cultivation. He grabs it, noting its lengthy title. When he opens it, he discovers it's the Corcus Meditation Art, Grade S. This meditation art is exclusively for psychic ability users, offering a 24-hour automatic meditation effect and enabling mental training. It allows purification of the soul through communion with nature and mental imagery space. There's also a belief that meditating near an oak tree increases efficiency. He's excited to have found a meditation method exclusively for S-level psychics, recalling his past life when he struggled with a B-rank meditation art. He realizes that psychic abilities can be highly effective as they level up, especially with enough spiritual power support. He looks forward to reaching his previous level before the full-scale war with the Empire. Later, in the underground of Ronaldo's castle, he looks at the moderate Mona ring he chose from Ronaldo's treasury. He contemplates the possibility of undertaking some personal reorganization he had been putting off. He reflects on completing all 70 quests in one night, obtaining skill books below C rank, rare grade items, and amassing 50,000 player-only coins. Opening his status window, he observes that he's currently at level 55, with various attributes such as strength, agility, stamina, intelligence, willpower, mana, spiritual power, and senses. His unique traits include Skill Collector, Developers Analyzing, Psychokinetic Meister, and Royal Lineage. That all of his body's stats had surpassed 65 in just 1 month. Even his mana and spiritual power had exceeded 70, indicating his increasing skill. In his past life, superhumans known as Sword Masters or high-tier psychokinetics had stats around 90. He made a vow to raise all his stats to 90 and even strive to achieve 100 if possible. His Raider Power Armor was currently in Grade B, partially open and sealed, with an output of 1.5 core power, an operating time of 5 minutes, and a self-charging operating mode. Its defense techniques included 6 circles, a mid-tier monoblade attribute force field, and a 50% reduction in attribute effects. It was a replica of mythical power armor, and most of its functions were sealed, but the seal could be undone with specific requirements. He had 2 special functions within his power armor: condemnation and covert satiation. Condemnation had an effect amplified by 200% against the target of the O, and covert satiation allowed him to absorb lower-grade power armor and imitate their functions. His skill decks had been unlocked through quests, and he had a quest to unlock the next seal on the skill decks by completing 50 quests related to proficiency in random slot skills. However, he had no clue how to proceed with unlocking the Rignator's potential, likely due to the challenging current output. He realized that he had unlocked a new unique trait, Developers Analyzing Grade X, which allowed him to borrow developer vision and steal information related to the system. It also facilitated the analysis of the flow of special energies. He believed this trait was gained when he subdued the Imperial Hound's demonic energy. He knew that whatever scenario or quest he chose to pursue, he would act according to his own desires and not be a puppet following the developer's wishes. Even if it meant disrupting scenarios or quests, he was determined to follow his own path. The next day in the library, someone knocked and informed him that Nikki had regained consciousness, and Nekia would like to meet him. He agreed to meet Nekia and soon found her, expressing her gratitude and thanking him for his kindness. He reassured her and told her to stay strong for her sister, Nikki, who was still very young and shy. Nikki thanked him for saving her and seemed shy, causing Nekia to apologize. He comforted Nekia, understanding that Nikki was just a child. He looked at Nikki with concern, wondering about her condition. That Nikki was still unwell concerned him, and he contemplated whether a closer examination was necessary. Approaching Nikki, he noticed intense waves in her eyes, which surprised him. While Nikki and Nekia looked at him with confusion, he wondered if his eyes were playing tricks on him. He decided to use the developer's analysis to take a closer look and was shocked by what he discovered. The system revealed that Nikki was level 5 with an unknown class, affiliated with the Free City of Mira. Her talent was unknown, but her potential talent was graded SS. Her stats were currently affected by her illness, with strength at 5, agility at 3, stamina at 3, intelligence at 60 to 30 after illness, willpower at 65 to 25 after illness, mana at 62 to 61 after illness, and senses at 52 to 45 after illness. Nikki possessed 3 unique traits, which were also unknown. Seeing that Nikki's potential talent was graded SS astonished him, and he pondered how powerful she might become if her illness could be cured, revealing her true potential. When Naya asked what was wrong, he snapped back to reality and assured her that it was nothing. However, he knew he needed to investigate further regarding Nikki's unique circumstances. A few days later, he was in the library reviewing documents, realizing that he had almost completed all the paperwork for Mira. Everything seemed to be going well, with more rogues and slave traders captured, and 15 more people rescued. The guild house construction was complete, and many civilians they had rescued were willing to work for them, including talented workers. He felt confident in every aspect, with only Nekia left to address. Renard informed him that Nekia was at the door, and she entered the room, appearing shy. After they were seated, he inquired about Nikki's condition. Nekia thanked him for his help and mentioned that Nikki had improved thanks to the hard work of the priests. He acknowledged her gratitude but knew that Nikki's condition had not actually improved and was beyond divine healing. He explained that he wanted to talk to her, and Nekia agreed to listen, wondering if there was a reason behind his extensive assistance to her and Nikki. Nedaya was eager to help but had encountered many greedy nobles who were only kind on the surface. She hoped Raul was different and didn't want to disappoint him. He assured her that his intentions were different and handed her the documents. Nekia was shocked to read the pardon letter, forgiving all her past sins and releasing all charges against her. Overwhelmed, she asked if it was real and how he had managed it. He explained that it was something he settled with money through the alliance, and it was a small price compared to her worth. Tears welled up in Nekia's eyes as she reflected on the 5 years of suffering due to the mana restriction. She felt foolish for comparing Raul to other nobles and being arrogant. Raul then asked her to share how she got her mana restricted, if she felt comfortable doing so. She recounted leaving her hometown as a child, recognized for her alchemical talent by her teacher. Nekia explained her past to him, how she had been recognized for her alchemical talent as a child and joined the Alchemist Association. By the age of 13, she had already mastered 3 circle magics, but her life took a dark turn when a disease outbreak claimed the lives of her family, leaving only Nikki behind. Nekia tried to bring Nikki to the association to live with her, but Nikki fell seriously ill at the age of 6, likely due to the hazardous substances around her. Nekia dedicated herself to finding a cure, reaching the 5th circle at the age of 18 but feeling helpless as Nikki's condition worsened. Desperate to save her sister, Nekia broke the taboo of using alchemy on a person, keeping Nikki alive with materials stolen from the association. However, she was caught and expelled, left to wander with Nikki, facing mana restrictions and societal judgment. Raul listened empathetically and gave her a potion, telling her it would free her. Nekia hesitated but eventually drank it, feeling a powerful surge within her. Raul revealed her new stats and traits, showing her the potential she held. Nekia knelt before him, pledging her loyalty and eagerness to help others, just as Raul had helped her and Nikki. Raul patted her head and handed her another document, surprising Nekia. He explained it was for Nikki's illness, a monophilaria. Nakia was stunned and grateful, knowing she would dedicate her life to making the perfect cure for Raul. Afterward, Nakia left, and Raul stretched his body, acknowledging that interacting like this was still awkward for him. However, he understood the importance of practicing, as these were the people and the place he needed to embrace as the citizens of Connect. He considered the day a great success, as Nakia became the first member who wasn't forced to join and was an alchemist who would leave a mark in history. Raul also knew that Nakia had the potential to find a cure for monolaria, recalling that she had fought the same incurable disease in the past. He had purposely given Nakia the incomplete version of the cure to help her grow, and he hoped that she would no longer feel burdened by Nikki once she completed it. Even if she couldn't make it in time, he could provide her with the remaining data. Raul smiled, satisfied that he had accomplished everything he had planned to do in Mura. Now Raul had to prepare for his next destination, the Reuben Kingdom's capital, also known as the Tomb of Sword Metropolis. Excitement bubbled within him as he anticipated what awaited him in this vast city. After a few days, they finally arrived at the city's gates. Jake couldn't contain his excitement at the sight of the bustling capital, vastly different from what they were used to. In the capital of the Reuben Kingdom, Tium, Jake told his group they didn't need to wait in line, as they were from the county. They eagerly followed his lead and headed straight in. However, to their surprise, they found no carriages or escorts waiting for them at the entrance. Raul wondered why there was such an absence of preparations. He turned to Bernard, asking if he had sent word of their arrival. Bernard assured him that he had, but something must have gone wrong. Bernard suggested he go to the mansion first to gather some help. Raul, not knowing the location, decided they should move together. They tried asking locals if they knew the way to the Ashton County mansion, but no one seemed to have a clue. It was disheartening to see how unfamiliar their family was to the city's inhabitants. Jake's frustration boiled over, and he confronted the city's patrol, telling them that soldiers were risking their lives to protect Ashton County from monsters. He questioned if they didn't even know who was responsible for maintaining that peace. The patrol seemed equally baffled, unaware of the mansion's existence. This left Raul perplexed and somewhat embarrassed. The situation took an unexpected turn when the patrol informed them that the address they possessed belonged to Baron Gender, not Count Ashton. Baron Gender had been living there for over a decade. Frustrated, Raul asked Bernard to look into it, and he discovered that Baron Gender was a 50-year-old male, a distant cousin in charge of foreign affairs. Understanding the mix-up, Raul decided they should go to Baron Gender's mansion to sort things out. Upon their arrival at the mansion, the guards questioned their identity. Philip informed them that they were from Ashton County, specifically Raul, the youngest son. However, the guards were still puzzled, asking if they had an invitation. This request for an invitation confused Philip, and he inquired further, but the guard's response only deepened the confusion. In a fit of anger, Jake dismounted his horse and confronted the guards, questioning the absurdity of asking the owner to wait outside. He demanded to see Baron Gender, regardless of who he was. The situation escalated, with Jake grabbing one of the guards and demanding they bring Baron out immediately. The other guards joined in, shouting and causing a commotion. As the commotion unfolded, the guards reacted in fear, dropping their spears and fleeing, leaving Jake in disbelief. He urgently questioned what had just occurred and why the guards were running away. He then instructed his group to proceed inside. However, as they were about to move forward, a voice rang out, ordering them to stop. Someone asked who they were. Philip, in response, introduced himself as Philip of the Golden Bear Knights of Ashton County and inquired about Baron Gender's whereabouts. The individual inquired why intruders were seeking the Baron, but soon realized his mistake. He apologized profusely, explaining that he had heard of their arrival but was too late. He assured them he would inform the Baron right away and instructed the guards to escort them to the reception room. They entered the mansion, and Raul couldn't help but notice its immense size, living up to its reputation. It would take a considerable amount of time to explore even with a carriage at their disposal. Raul was taken aback by the grandeur of the building, reserved exclusively for the lineage of Ashton County. He couldn't help but wonder why he heard music coming from it and observed strangers casually strolling in the front yard. Jake inquired about a possible event or party, as someone had mentioned it earlier. The guard explained that it was Aaron's, Baron Gender's third son, birthday party, a common occurrence in the mansion. This revelation surprised Jake, who was clearly irritated. He asked the guard whose party it was, and someone informed Raul that they had been eagerly awaiting his arrival. A man descended the stairs and approached Raul, inquiring if he was indeed Raul and noting that he had grown significantly. Rawl assessed the man's strength but couldn't help but feel disappointed as Baron Gender was only level 50, not even an expert. He now understood why other noble families looked down on Ashton County and why his father entrusted Baron Gender with foreign affairs. However, he refused to accept this situation. When Baron asked if he recognized him, Rawl admitted he couldn't recall ever hearing his name mentioned. Baron chuckled, referred to him as clever, and explained their complex family tree, suggesting Rawl could call him uncle. Rawl remained vigilant, determined not to be taken advantage of by Baron. He questioned Bernard for a clearer explanation of the connection between Baron Gender and himself. Bernard, maintaining eye contact with Baron, clarified that Baron Gender was Count Ashton's second cousin, while Baron was Rawl's third cousin, responsible for foreign affairs in the capital. Baron raised his voice, questioning Rawl's behavior and if his father had not taught him respect for his elders. Rawl retorted that Baron seemed quite comfortable with his father and inquired if he wasn't afraid of the power of Ashton County. Philip chimed in, revealing that only Viscount Austin, the Count's younger brother, could comfortably engage in conversation with Rawl, apart from direct descendants, as a show of respect and hierarchy. Rawl wondered why he was being looked down upon by a cousin he had never known. Baron admitted fault, acknowledging that he had forgotten that Rawl was now an adult. He promised to show respect and asked if Rawl was satisfied. Rawl responded with a casual whatever and contemplated the many questions he had for Baron. Philip, not finished with his inquiries, asked Baron why there was no escort provided, despite numerous messages regarding their arrival. Baron explained that he had indeed ordered a carriage but believed there must have been a mistake due to the high number of guests present. He offered his apologies to Rawl as Philip posed one more question: why the birthday party for Baron Gender's son was taking place at the main building. Baron Gender explained the need for a grand party as part of foreign affairs to establish their presence, dismissing any concerns. Rawl couldn't help but sarcastically question the guard's understanding of nobility, but decided to let it go, especially since Philip was present. Pierce handed Rawl an invitation found in the yard, and Rawl, in turn, presented it to Baron, highlighting the absence of any mention of Ashton County and only the names and symbol of the Gender family. Baron, although somewhat fearful, insisted that it was indeed an official Ashton County invitation. He urged Rawl to cease discussing the party, emphasizing that it was beyond his authority even as the young master. He suggested that Rawl take up the matter at home. Rawl pressed Baron, questioning the appropriateness of the party. Baron confidently defended the tradition of using the party hall when the mansion was vacant. Rawl reached into his coat, revealing documents that designated him as a temporary count deputy. He ordered Baron to end the party within an hour and provide a detailed report on the party's expenses. Baron angrily protested, calling it nonsense and accusing Rawl of being ridiculous. He argued that he couldn't simply send the guests away and questioned Rawl's authority to issue such orders. Rawl, resolute, granted Baron an hour out of generosity, but warned of his willingness to intervene personally if necessary. Returning the documents to his coat, Rawl pondered Baron's audacity and the lack of concrete evidence regarding Ashton County's collapse. He hoped to uncover something significant in this situation. However, he was frustrated to realize that they had escorted him not to the main building but to the mansion's annex. The explanation offered was that Baron requested a quieter space since the main building was crowded. Rawl wasn't convinced, and he expressed his displeasure, refusing to accept this arrangement. He mounted his horse and announced that he would head to the main building. His group followed suit. Upon entering the main building, Rawl burst through the door, infuriated by the scene inside. He couldn't believe that Baron and the Baron's family were present. According to tradition, only the Count and his family were supposed to reside in the 3-story main building and office. Rawl's anger flared, and he confronted Baron about this situation, demanding an explanation. He questioned whether it was a Count family tradition for ministers and the like to occupy the Count's office. Baron fearfully claimed that they were merely borrowing it temporarily, as he rarely visited. Rawl, seething with anger, unsheathed his rapier, ordering Baron and his family to leave immediately. He threatened to deal with them all if they didn't vacate the mansion by the end of the day, even if they were close family. Furthermore, he decided to strip Baron of his position as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, a shocking declaration that left Baron stunned. Rawl sternly instructed Baron to present proper documentation by the following day if he wished to raise objections. Baron, still fuming but silenced, retreated with his family. Rawl observed their departure through the window. Realizing that they needed to find some materials for their plans, Rawl worried that they might have been discarded due to the mansion's condition. Luckily, the materials were still there, intact. As he surveyed the scene, he couldn't help but notice that all the documents related to the mansion's management and finances were left in the office. He thought they must have been quite complacent to assume that nothing significant would happen overnight. In his previous life, he had studied business administration and worked at a trading company, making him quite knowledgeable about mansion-related matters. However, Bernard was undoubtedly the most well-versed expert in this area. Raoul was informed by Philip that Baron Gender had indeed left the mansion with his family. He couldn't believe it and asked Philip for confirmation, questioning if they had left quietly. Philip confirmed the unexpected departure, mentioning that they had left quietly with only essential belongings. Raoul brushed it off, saying there was no need to worry as they would eventually return, and there was no need to take all their baggage out. Philip inquired if it would be better to give them time to organize slowly. Raoul insisted on swiftly addressing the situation, stating that it was more efficient to confront Baron when he was underestimating them. Additionally, he knew he needed to establish this place as a branch of the First Guild unit once he found a suitable location in the capital. As it was his house, he couldn't allow random individuals to cause trouble inside.